Okay, that's a lie. But it's useful to know how to talk about the weather anyway. First, here's some vocabulary.
Oh man, I feel a nor'easter coming on.
The Spanish word for weather is tiempo, and the word for climate is clima. You can tell that tiempo is a masculine word because it ends in O. Clima ends in A, so it's feminine, right? Wrong! Clima is an exception, a freak, a quasimodo of a word. Clima is masculine, even though it ends in A.
Clima is masculine, even though it ends in A. Memorize it. And while you're at it, here's the rest of the vocabulary for this section.
Tormenta means storm. Hielo means ice. Granizo is hail. And ropa interior means underwear. Mucho means much or a lot.
And malo means bad.
That's it for the vocabulary. Let's move on to how to express the weather. When we talk about the weather in English, we say it's sunny or it's cold. We use it, a genderless singular pronoun, and is, which is the third-person singular form of the English verb to be. In Spanish, sometimes you use the to-be verb estar to talk about the weather. We'll teach you how and when to do that in a minute. But with some weather conditions, Spanish speakers use the verb hace, which is the third-person singular form of the verb hacer, which means to make or to do.
When you want to say it's cold, it's hot, it's sunny, or it's windy, use the word hace plus the weather condition. We'll explain.
To say it's cold, say hace frío. Here we go again with a funny translation thing. It literally means it makes cold, but don't get hung up on that. Just learn it. To say it's hot, say hace calor. It's sunny is hace sol, and it's windy is hace viento.
Hace implies it or some third-person non-specific entity, so you don't need a pronoun. In fact, there really isn't a pronoun that means it in Spanish. It is implied by the non-specific third-person singular verb. Don't stress about the details. Just remember to use hace with these specific weather conditions. It's hot, hace calor. It's cold, hace frío. It's sunny, hace sol. Or it's windy, hace viento.
To say it's raining, it's cloudy, or it's hailing, you use the verb está, the third-person singular form of estar, plus the weather condition. This construction is easy because it's very similar to English. Like with hace, you don't have to use a pronoun because está implies a non-specific third-person subject. After está, you plug in the weather condition in its gerund form. A gerund is the ing form of a verb. Like when we say it's raining in English, the verb to rain is in its gerund, or ing form. Raining. We won't teach you details about forming gerunds in Spanish right now. Just learn how to say these weather conditions for now, and you'll learn more about forming other gerunds when you take more Spanish. To say it's raining, say está lloviendo. The verb to rain is llover. The gerund, or ing form of llover, is lloviendo. Está lloviendo. It's raining. To say it's hailing, say está granizando. The verb granizar means to hail. The gerund form of granizar is granizando. Está granizando. It's hailing. The verb to snow is nevar. To say it's snowing, say está nevando. Nevando is the gerund or ing form of the verb nevar. It's snowing. Está nevando. Remember, just memorize these gerund terms for now so you can express the weather. You'll learn about gerunds as you study more Spanish.
In Spanish, degrees are called grados. You can express temperature in grados Fahrenheit using the Fahrenheit scale like we do in the United States, or you can express temperature in grados centigrados, which are degrees Celsius. Remember, most of the world uses the Celsius scale. We just like to be different here in America.
So now, practice making some sentences with words that relate to the weather. Many of these words we gave you in the vocabulary at the beginning of this section. If you don't remember these words, simply stop the tape and rewind and review them.
La tormenta es muy mala. Está lloviendo mucho. La tormenta es muy mala. Está lloviendo mucho.
Está nevando. Hay hielo en las calles. Está nevando. Hay hielo en las calles. Hace frío. Hay granizo en mi ropa interior. Hace frío. Hay granizo en mi ropa interior.
Let's review. In Spanish, they use the verb hace and está to talk about the weather. Hace, the third-person singular form of the verb hacer, which means to make or to do, is used with the weather conditions hot, sunny, cold, and windy. Hace calor means it's hot. Hace sol means it's sunny. Hace frío means it's cold. And hace viento means it's windy. The verb estar is used when you want to say it's raining, it's snowing, or it's hailing. For these weather conditions, follow the verb está with the gerund form of the verb for the weather condition. So to say it's raining in Spanish, say está lloviendo. To say it's snowing, say está nevando. And if it's hailing, say está granizando.
Part 2. Some grammatical stuff. Section A, using adjectives.
There are several issues you have to consider when you use adjectives in Spanish. You already know that Spanish nouns are considered either masculine or feminine, and they can be either singular or plural.
The adjectives which modify the nouns have to match the nouns in gender and in number. In other words, if the noun is masculine and plural, the adjective has to be masculine and plural as well. Also, the placement of adjectives in Spanish sentences is usually different from the placement of adjectives in English sentences.
We'll explain all of this in detail, so hang in there. First, here's the vocabulary you need for this section.
Sucio means dirty.
And limpio means clean.
Débil is the Spanish word for weak.
A gato is a cat.
And feo means ugly.
Pájaro means bird, and tortuga means turtle.
The adjective alto means tall.
I am a conejo.
Ratón means mouse.
And desagradable means disagreeable.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it
I
does.
stand corrected.
You've learned a little bit about adjectives already, but we need to go over some more rules about them. Remember, it's essential that your adjectives agree in gender and number with the nouns they modify.
For example, if an adjective modifies a noun that's singular and feminine, the adjective must also be singular and feminine. If an adjective modifies a noun that's masculine and plural, the adjective must also be masculine and plural.
A feminine adjective ends in A, and a masculine adjective ends in O. This is generally true of the nouns they modify as well. If you need the adjective to be plural, just add an S on the end.
Remember, these are general rules. All languages break the rules sometimes.
Pay close attention to the endings of the following adjectives.
I am dirty.
Estoy sucia!
Sucia is an adjective that means dirty. Since Rosa is a woman talking about herself, she uses the singular feminine form of the adjective.
Hey, how can you tell that sucia is singular?
There's no S at the end.
Oh, yeah.
We are dirty.
Estamos sucios!
Now there are two idiotas in the mud. Rosa is referring to both herself and Manuel. Sucios is the masculine plural form of the adjective. You can tell it's plural because it has an S on the end. Rosa uses the masculine form because Manuel is a man. When one or more of a group is male, use the masculine form of adjectives.
They are clean.
Están limpias.
Limpias is an adjective that means clean. Manuel the mudboy is referring to women, so he uses the feminine form of the adjective. Notice the A in limpias. And since he's referring to more than one woman, he uses the plural form of the adjective by adding an S to the end of it. Okay, so we went through the whole thing about adjectives ending in A or O. Here comes the monkey wrench. There are a few Spanish adjectives that either end in E, such as triste, which means sad, or end in a consonant, such as débil, which means weak.
When you use an adjective that ends in E, such as triste in its singular form, you can keep the E ending regardless of whether the noun it modifies is masculine or feminine. You only have to consider the numbers. If your noun is plural, just add S to the adjective. Triste would become tristes if it modified a plural noun.
Examples! Examples! We must have examples.
She is sad.
Ella está triste.
The subject ella is singular and feminine, so we use the singular form of the adjective triste. The E ending remains just E. If both of the people at the table were sad, we'd say, ellos están tristes. Now we have a masculine plural subject, ellos, so we add s to the adjective triste. It doesn't matter that ellos is masculine. Since triste ends in E, you don't have to consider the gender of the subject, only the number, singular or plural.
We use the verb estar when we talk about my deep sadness, because I'm not going to cry over spilled milk anymore. The condition was temporary.
Now we'll show you an adjective that ends in a consonant.
Débil is an adjective that means weak. When you use this adjective with any singular noun, use the form débil regardless of whether the noun is masculine or feminine. If your subject is plural, use the plural form débiles. Since débil ends in a consonant, you have to add es to make it plural. You can't just add s. That's just the way they do it in Spanish.
Gender just doesn't matter with adjectives that end in a consonant. You only have to match the number, singular or plural.
So far, we've been practicing sentences that put the adjective after a verb, like he is weak. Él es débil. Sometimes adjectives go right beside the noun they modify, like in the phrase, the ugly cat.
In English, we put the adjective ugly before the noun cat. In Spanish, the adjective usually goes after the noun it modifies. The phrase, the ugly cat, would be el gato feo. The adjective feo, which means ugly, goes after the noun gato, which means cat.
If the cat was a girl, it wouldn't be el gato feo, it would be la gata fea.
La gata fea.
Let's get a little more practice using the proper forms of adjectives. Now we're going to move pretty fast, so grab the remote so you can pause or rewind if you need to.
The intelligent mouse.
El ratón inteligente. The bad birds.
Los pájaros malos.
The fast cows.
Las vacas rápidas.
The tall turtle.
La tortuga alta.
The handsome chickens.
Los pollos guapos. The disagreeable rabbit.
El conejo desagradable.
So now you know a lot about Spanish adjectives, but you're about to learn even more.
Yeehaw!
Section B, demonstrative adjectives.
Here's another vocabulary section. You'll be learning a lot about farm animals, man.
Toro means bull.
Apestoso is an adjective that means stinky. Stinky cheese.
And oveja is a sheep.
Estúpido means stupid. And muy means very. This turkey's muy estúpido.
Hey, I take offense to that.
Hombre means man.
Mujer means woman.
In English, when we want to point out an object, a place, or a person, we sometimes use words like this, that, these, or those. When these words are used with a noun, they're called demonstrative adjectives.
Demonstrative adjectives are adjectives because they indicate something about the noun they modify or describe. They're called demonstrative because they demonstrate or show you what or who is being referred to. Spanish uses demonstrative adjectives too.
Like all Spanish adjectives, demonstrative adjectives have to agree in gender and number with the noun they modify. Let's take a look at these things. Actually, we're going to look at this and these first. Then we'll look at that and those, and then maybe we'll check out those over there. Got it? You will.
This and these generally refer to something that's right in front of you or immediately accessible.
Here are the Spanish demonstrative adjectives that mean this and these, as in this foot or these feet. The masculine singular word meaning this is este, and the masculine plural word meaning these is estos. The feminine singular word meaning this is esta, and the feminine plural word meaning these is estas.
If you want to refer to this bull right here in front of you, to say this bull is stinky, you would say, este toro es apestoso. Use this demonstrative adjective este because bull or toro is masculine and singular, and este is a masculine singular demonstrative adjective. Since all bulls stink, you may want to say, these bulls are stinky, referring to the whole stinking herd. You would say, estos toros son apestosos. Notice that when we make the sentence plural, every word becomes plural. Estos is a masculine plural demonstrative adjective. Toros is a masculine plural subject. Son is a third-person plural form of the verb ser, which means to be. And apestosos, which means stinky, is an adjective in its masculine plural form because it's modifying a masculine plural subject, toros.
If you want to refer to this particular sheep to say, this sheep is very stupid, you would say, esta oveja es muy estúpida. Use the demonstrative adjective esta because sheep, or oveja, is feminine and singular. Esta is the feminine singular demonstrative adjective.
Now, while sheep are cute and fuzzy and all that, you have to admit that none of them are bright. In light of this, you may want to refer to the whole herd and say, these sheep are very stupid. You would say, estas ovejas son muy estúpidas. Notice that, again, all the words in the sentence took on their plural form when the subject became plural, except for muy, which means very. Muy does not have or need a plural form.
Notice in the sentence, estas ovejas son muy estúpidas, we use the verb ser as our to be verb. That's because the stupidity of sheep is a permanent condition. They won't just get over it and wake up smart tomorrow morning.
Here's another thing to think about. The demonstrative adjectives está and estás look a lot like the second and third person singular forms of the verb estar. But there's one crucial difference, and you should remember what it is.
The verb forms está and estás have accents over the A. The demonstrative adjectives esta and estas do not.
Now we'll talk about that and those. As in English, that and those generally refer to something relatively nearby or accessible, but not necessarily whatever's immediately in front of you, like this and these do. It's like when you say, that pile of dirty laundry, as opposed to this pile of dirty laundry.
If you want to say, that man is crazy, you would say, ese hombre está loco. Ese is the masculine singular demonstrative adjective that means that. Notice we use the verb estar as our to be verb in this sentence. That's because craziness isn't a permanent condition in this case. Here come his friends. Now you want to say, those people are crazy. So you'd say, esos hombres están locos. The group consists of only men, so we use the masculine plural form of the demonstrative adjective esos, as well as the masculine plural form of the adjective locos.
The feminine singular adjective, which means that, is esa.
So if you want to say that woman is sleepy, say, esa mujer está cansada. And if her female classmates are in the same condition, you'd say, esas mujeres están cansadas, which means those women are sleepy. Let's examine the sentence. Esas mujeres están cansadas. Esas is a demonstrative adjective that means those. It is feminine and plural because it modifies the noun mujeres, which means women. The word mujer is feminine, as you might expect since it means woman, but it does not end in an A. It's one of those exceptions that you have to memorize.
To make mujer plural, you can't just add s. You have to add es. When you make any noun which ends in a consonant plural, you have to add es. If the noun ends in a vowel, like most do, you can just add s. Next is the verb están, which is the third person plural form of estar, which as you know by now means to be. Why do we use estar instead of ser in this sentence?
Because as soon as class is over, we won't be sleepy anymore.
Right. Sleepiness is a temporary condition, so you use the verb estar. Finally, the adjective cansadas, which means sleepy, is feminine and plural to match the subject mujeres.
There's another demonstrative adjective used in Spanish that we don't really have an equivalent for in English. It means that over there, implying something that's farther away or more remote than this or that. The masculine singular form of this one is aquel. Let's go back to the bull field and we'll show you how to use it and its variations.
As you know, this bull is stinky. Este toro es apestoso. And that bull is stinky. Ese toro es apestoso. Well, that bull way over there is stinky too, so you'd say, aquel toro es apestoso. In fact, all those bulls over there with him are stinky. The masculine plural form of aquel is aquellos. So you'd say, aquellos toros son apestosos.
To point out the one stupid sheep across the field, you would say, aquella oveja es estúpida. She's standing in a huddle of stupid sheep across the field, so to include all of them in your sheep derision, you'd say, aquellas ovejas son estúpidas, because aquellas is the feminine plural form of the demonstrative adjective aquel.
Hey, it's review time. Like all Spanish adjectives, demonstrative adjectives have to agree in gender and number with the noun they modify. The demonstrative adjectives this and these generally refer to something that's right in front of you or immediately accessible. The masculine singular word meaning this is este, and the masculine plural word meaning these is estos. The feminine singular word meaning this is esta, and the feminine plural word meaning these is estas.
As in English, that and those generally refer to something relatively nearby or accessible, but not necessarily whatever's immediately in front of you. Ese is the masculine singular word that means that, and esos is the masculine plural form that means those. The feminine singular adjective, which means that, is esa, and esas is the feminine plural word that means those. There's another demonstrative adjective used in Spanish that we don't really have an equivalent for in English. It means that over there, implying something that's farther away or more remote than this or that. The masculine singular form of this one is aquel, and the masculine plural form is aquellos. Aquella is the singular feminine word that means that over there, and aquellas is the feminine plural form.
Part 3. Verb that word.
As in English, verbs in Spanish are used to describe an action, except Spanish speakers call them verbos instead of verbs.
Verbos. That's masculine and plural.
That's correct. Thank you. Anyway, to use verbs in Spanish, you have to learn how to conjugate them.
Spanish verbs are organized into 3 categories: those that end in AR, those that end in ER, and those that end in IR. Each verb has different verb endings. You choose which ending you need to match the verb's subject. For example, if your subject is nosotros, or we, then you need to use the verb ending that matches nosotros. Hang on. We'll go into all the details in just a minute. The verb endings are a little different for each of the 3 categories of verbs, AR, ER, and IR. We'll show you how to conjugate regular verbs in each of the categories.
Regular verbs are those which you can conjugate by following a predictable pattern. Once you learn the patterns, you can conjugate any regular Spanish verb, even if you don't know what the verb means. We'll begin with verbs that end AR.
Section A. AR verbs in the present tense.
Here's your next dose of vocabulary. And here's a spoonful of sugar to help it go down.
The Spanish word for shower is ducha. Here's another kind of shower. The word lluvia means rain. Trabajo means work, like the place you work or what you do for a living.
Todo means all or everything.
The phrase a través de means through, as in get it through your head.
And pared means wall.
Ah!
Walls are very hard.
Tren means train.
A lectura is a reading or a lecture.
Okay, let's get started. Don't get too wound up about this whole verb thing. Regular, predictable verbs are easy to deal with.
Let's start with these 2 obvious points about AR verbs in the present tense. AR verbs are verbs that end in the letters AR, and present tense verbs indicate action that's going on right now.
Do you hear that? Action that's going on right now.
To learn Spanish verbs, you just have to learn what each verb means, which is just a matter of memorizing vocabulary. And you have to memorize the verb endings and know when to use them. Verb endings match in person and number with the subject, letting you know who's doing the action. Each subject pronoun, I, you, he, we, they, and the others, has a verb ending that corresponds with it.
Here are the endings that go with AR verbs: o, as, a, amos, and an. When you use these endings, drop the AR off the end of the verb and add the appropriate ending that matches your subject. Hang in there.